Simi, you can start.
A very good evening to one and all. I extend my warm welcome to you to the episode 4 of the State of the Environment Planet Talks with me, Simi Mehta. Over 5.5 million tons of waste is produced each day across the globe, and only 60% of the total global solid waste is disposed through scientific and sustainable manner, ultimately contributing to environmental pollution and public health risks. As the pandemic disrupts fragile waste management ecosystems, it is becoming more and more important for nations across the globe to understand how COVID-19 is affecting waste management efforts and what should be done. To understand the challenges that are faced by India during the ongoing pandemic in terms of waste management, with ever increasing piling up of biomedical waste like PPEs, face masks, gloves, etc., and to design and implement effective strategies for managing solid waste during and post coronavirus pandemic. We have with us Professor Brajesh Dubey from the PK Sinha Center for Bioenergy and Renewables, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, an expert on integrated solid waste management. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure to introduce to you Professor Dubey. Professor Dubey likes to call himself a garbologist. He holds a PhD in environmental engineering sciences from the University of Florida, USA. He has been an Endeavor Fellow at the Deakin University, an assistant professor and graduate faculty at Environmental Engineering Program, School of Engineering at University of Gulf, Canada, adjunct international faculty at Amrita Center for Sustainable Development in Tamil Nadu, assistant professor and graduate faculty of Environmental Engineering at the University of Auckland in New Zealand, postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Environmental Engineering Sciences at University of Florida. Professor Dubey has been invited by different universities and institutions from across the world for sharing his expertise and research, and has published over 200 research articles, books, book chapters, monographs, etc. It is a matter of great privilege, sir, for us to have you over at the talk by the Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development. Thank you very much, sir, again for joining us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Simi, for the wonderful introduction. So I'll get started. So what I have prepared some slides. So I'll go over those slides first, then we will get into the discussion on that. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay.
Yes.
So you can see that, I think.
Yes.
So we'll
do it on the screen.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so as the title of today's webinar and further discussion is on what India needs for effective waste management during and post coronavirus pandemic. We are in the middle of the pandemic. I hope we are towards the end of the pandemic. I hope it every day that it should end now. It has been too much for last 9 months. And but during this 9 months, a lot of things has happened. The way we have been shopping around has changed. The way we are our day-to-day life has also changed. So all these things has an impact on how the waste is being generated, what is the what kind of waste is being generated, and from where the waste is being generated. So for example, if you look at the industries, like the hotel industries, the restaurants, they were closed for most part of this pandemic. They have opened for last month or maybe 2 months or like that, but still they are running at low capacity, and they are running it with, they cannot serve people in the restaurant. Depending on where you are in the country, there are different rules are slightly different. But for example, in my area here, it's only takeouts. I cannot go and eat at a restaurant. It's only takeout right now. So, and that has changed the way. So you will not get too much garbage coming from those places. But you will get more garbage packaging and other stuff coming from individual houses. Swiggy, Zomato, and all those stuff, Amazon, Flipkart. So a lot of activities have happened, and that has changed the way the waste is being produced. And over on top of that, the problem of this virus, the fear of the virus, and the impact of virus on how the waste is being managed. So that is what we are going to talk about today. And we are also going to talk about that what we need to do as a country to manage the waste properly, not even during this pandemic, but even after that. So because as many of you who have joined this webinar, you are kind of little, I assume that you are at least a little bit familiar with the waste management scenario. So as you know, there are certain issues in terms of waste management in our country, which needs attention, which needs a lot of like intervention from different stakeholders. So Simi was giving you a number as well in terms of how much waste is being produced per day. This is a global number. The world is generating 2.01 billion tons, and that's an annual number. What Simi told was a daily number. So we produce more than 2.01 billion tons of municipal solid waste daily, and annually, in a year. And if the way it is continuing today, if it keeps on continuing along the same line, we are going to see a waste of around 3.4 billion tons by 2050. So that's a lot of waste to be managed. And India being the second most populous country as of today, and probably the most populous country by 2050, because we'll probably overtake China before that. So we will be the one country which will have to manage a lot of waste. Our per capita waste generation is still small, but the total waste that we produce is quite high. Now, what is there in the waste? And if you look at individually, we have metals, which is around 4%. We have glass, which is around 5%. And we have plastic, where we have paper, then we have food waste. So we have plastic 12%, paper 17%, and food waste is around 44%. Now, individually, if we look at like metal individually, or glass, or plastic, or paper, they are recycled. They can be recyclable. They are easily, there is a market for recycled paper, there is a market for recycled plastic, there is a market for recycled glass, there is a market for recycled metal. And so this can be easily recycled if, and that's a big if we can keep the waste separated. And in waste management term, we call it segregated. So segregation of waste, and that's very, very important. We'll talk about that in a minute. So waste segregation, Municipal Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 tells us that you should at least have wet and dry segregation. Now, wet waste is our food and greens. So this is our wet waste. Dry waste with all these four categories, and there could be some more categories out there. So if we can keep these four categories segregated with the food waste separate, then our concrete, bricks, street sweepings, they are all collected, segregated, then we can make use of most of these waste material. So what is the problem? The problem is the waste is getting totally mixed up. As you see in your town and cities in India, and wherever you go out, you see the waste is totally mixed up. We have the food waste there, we have the paper, we have the plastic, glass, metals, everything is mixed together. Now, when everything gets mixed together, it becomes very, 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 very difficult to manage that garbage. In fact, there is hardly any technology out there. There are some who claims to do it, but they also have not shown very good result. So at least if you look at the technologies, they all work on the principle of source segregated garbage. Just few this last week on Saturday evening, we had this Vaibhav Summit. This Vaibhav Summit on waste management, solid waste management, and waste to wealth was on Saturday evening on 10th of October. And I was asked to chair that session. And we had several presenters from India as well as from abroad. As you probably know, Vaibhav is kind of bringing the Indian experts and international experts of Indian origin and together. And we are looking at Indian problem, try to solve Indian problem. So It's, if you look with the, and I think that video will be available. If you have not watched it, it will be on YouTube soon. So if you see that most of the technology that was presented, and in fact I would say all of the technology that was presented on that particular evening worked on the principle that it has to be source segregated garbage. And we saw a lot of potential if we have source segregated garbage. But when things gets mixed up, it is actually becomes very, very difficult. And only thing you can do with this mixed garbage is probably put it in a sanitary landfill. We call it engineered landfill, and try to do the gas generation and do use the landfill gas to energy. Many some North American cities do that, and some other cities around the world do that as well. But that's that's a not a better way of doing it. We can recycling most of it, doing the resource recovery in terms of compost or biogas, anaerobic digestion plant. These days we are also talking about getting hydrogen out of this waste. And so technology is already there, but this food waste has to be just food waste. If it mixed with others, it's the value is lost. So if you look at in terms of, we are in South Asia. South Asia, 334 million tons of, that's the waste that is being it's being produced, and this number will only go up. So, and so we, there is a lot of jobs which can be created in this sector. As we are talking about economy today, that we need to create more jobs and other stuff, this is one sector which can produce lots of green jobs and can bring a lot of revenue to the government as well. So but we have to encourage this source segregation. And this is what I have been trying to propose, trying to talk about again and again. Some of you may have heard me before. Some of, for you, some of the things I'm saying, I may have said same thing 3 years ago, because that's, I think, is the number one thing to do. Segregation, segregation, segregation. This piece was written by me in Economic Times in January 2018, where effective waste disposal, segregation is the key. Because if if this waste is not segregated, we are seeing lots of problem in the sector in India. The smart cities program that the government of India has launched, that also talks about waste management. Like 1 out of 6 areas that has been identified is waste management. And so there is a push from the government side. There is that Swachh Bharat mission, Swachh Sarvechan survey, a smart cities program, a Skill India, now like Atmanirbhar Bharat. So there are several programs out there through which we need to tap in the resources from those programs, and we need to make these ULBs get those resources, that hard infrastructure that needs to be built, so that we can do a smart waste management system in the country. So how the waste is managed today, the most favored is prevention or minimization, reuse, recycle, and the least favored is disposal. So we go from top to bottom. Most favored is on the top side. As we go down, it kind of goes down, 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 and then least favored is this. But what is happening today? Most of waste is just getting disposed. That too in dump sites, not even an engineered landfill. Mostly dump site. Less is recycled, less is reused, and less is the prevention. And that's not only in our country. That is, as Simi was saying during the intro as well. This is a global problem. It's a global issue. So if you look at, for example, this is a global map of how the waste is being managed around the world, and so data like this takes time to come. So this is few years old data, but things does not change overnight that much. So if you just compare, so if you look at India, mostly 90%, more than 90% of the waste was just going to the dump site. While if you look at the Europe, it was 30%. So even in Europe, mostly from Eastern European countries, Western European countries were actually doing better. Eastern European countries is which are struggling, is still struggling, and so there nearly 30% still goes to, but there it is mostly engineered landfill. In our case, it's mostly like a dump sites, and which creates problem in terms of the groundwater contamination, in terms of air pollution, and methane getting out, landfill catching fire during the month of December, January, when it becomes very dry. You see that Kolkata landfill is on fire, Bombay landfill is on fire. Many times you hear the Delhi landfill is on fire. That's because we are not managing those waste disposal sites properly. And if you see the example everywhere, like even in US, they have to do, and they need to improve their waste management system. They are doing better than us, but they're doing much better than us, but still they have to improve quite a bit. So if you look at this is the recycling, this circle with this recycle symbol, 24% waste recycled there, 39% in UK, 43% in Europe, European Union. And if you look at Western European, that number may be close to 60%. So Western European countries are doing really well. But there, again, it is the source segregation. Uh, those of us who has a chance to travel to those countries, we know that when we stay, say for a few months, we have to learn how to segregate the garbage, and then we have to put the segregated garbage correctly. Otherwise, the waste will not be picked up, and if the waste is not picked up, it becomes your headache to try to go and dispose that waste at the waste disposal center, and you may get fined as well. So the reinforcement, proper rule, and proper infrastructure. So those are really critical, which is needed. Now, in Indian context, we have, so in terms of status of solid waste management in India, this data is from CPCB 2015 data. We don't have the newer data. This is another one area which we need to really work on. We need to improve our data. We need to have like they do in US and the other countries where every other year they do a waste audit. What is waste audit? Every big city and town will do their um, how much waste is being produced. So they do it every 2 years, every 3 years, maximum every 5 years. They will have that waste audit, and that waste audit will give from every small cities and towns. The number will get collected at the state level, and then the number gets collected at the federal level. So we have a federal picture of what is there in the garbage, and then we have the state level picture as well. Because see, India is a big country. Every state is different. There is some states gets a lot of rainfall, other states gets less rainfall, so garbage will be dry in some area, garbage will not be that much dry in the other area. So it cannot be one size fit all solution. Although our rules are kind of like that, we have a one size fit all, but then we need to work on our rules and try to make it kind of a bit flexible, because it has to be a guideline from the federal government, but things has to be left at the state level to do certain things as well. Because some facilities, some cities, some states, as you will see, they are more urbanized, some are less urbanized. So waste quantity, waste quality all changes as you move from one a state to another state. You may not realize that because it is a subtle difference, but even that difference does lead to changes in your waste calorific value, biodegradability of the waste, and that dictates whether you should go for a waste to energy plant, whether you could go for a compost plant. So all those things. So in terms of in India, only 70% of the waste is collected, and that's again I would say it's more of on a uh, kind of lenient side. I think we probably collect even less than that. And out of the collected, nearly around 25% is only treated. The rest is all going to the dump site. We have some compost plant, biomethanation plant, RDF plant, and waste to energy plant. Those things were within pipeline, and many of those are working. So many of those are not working. Actually, many of those are struggling to work just because of mixed garbage. And once the places where it is working, they have done at least some sort of source segregation of garbage. So this is a typical how the waste is. People will come to your house. This is from the Vizag where they're doing the wet and dry separate collection. The primary collection, the food waste is collected. This is again part of a project that we are working on with the Vizag Municipal Corporation, where we looked at how the waste is managed, and then what they should do with the garbage. So we have been involved in doing some of these kind of technical help to Vizag city in terms of how better manage their waste. And that includes your domestic waste, drain cleaning waste, street sweeping waste from market, waste from hotels, wet as well as the dry waste from the hotel. And then it's going to the old dump site. They're working on bioremediation. They are thinking of setting up a waste to energy plant and also a sanitary landfill. And then they have a composting unit. So as long as they are able to do the separate collection, they are able to, but from the areas where they are not able to do separate collection, other than this sanitary landfill, there is no other really option out there. So this is some more examples of where like we have been working with several smart cities in India, like Vizag. You heard about that. We have done some work with Guwahati. I have worked with Kolkata, and then we have done some kind of. I will not say we didn't had a project with them, but we have visited and discussed smart city programs with several cities of the first lot of first 20 cities. So, and we have collected these pictures from. These are our own pictures of. Where we visited these plants. As you can see, there are things happening in the country as well. There are some very good examples like in LAP, and then there is Indore. There is places in Goa area. So there are, if you look at yeah, on the internet, you will find that there are few cities who are actually doing quite decent work in this area. So they have this biodegradable separate where it gets a composted or biomethanation plant done, or where the dry waste is collected separate, and then they have these kind of like a recycling facilities in place where the materials are recycled and sold off. Um, so how to go about, like in terms of whether pandemic, non-pandemic, this is a general stuff, then we'll get into pandemic in a minute, in a few minutes. So for any waste management info, like for any city, first we have to find out what is the need, how much, how much waste we are producing actually, in what quantity we are producing, and what is there in the garbage. Some of you who have heard me before, I kind of relate this to getting your blood test done, urine test done, X-ray done. Say if I'm going through certain disease, certain illness, I get to get certain diagnosis done first. Then I can go to the doctor, and the doctor will go through the diagnosis, and then based on the diagnosis, he will write the prescription. So here as well, identifying the need and reviewing existing system. These are all your diagnosis in terms of finding what is there in the garbage. What kind of garbage I'm producing. But I'm saying I means my city, my town is producing, and how much. So those data is important, and those realistic data, don't no guesstimates, actual data. Because if you don't have actual data, many of the plants have already failed. We don't want to repeat the same thing again. So we need actual data, and we have done that actual data in Vizag. We have done that actual data in Guwahati. We have done that actual data partly in Kolkata, not for full Kolkata, but for part of the Kolkata, we have done that work. So you review the existing system, then review what is the regulation out there, then you come up with a decision making framework, like what kind of infrastructure we need to develop. You need to establish objectives, identify what will be the potential components. Based on, once you have an idea of what is there in the garbage, you can see waste to energy will work, composting will work, biomethanation will work. You come up with those components, compare the option, develop the plan, implement the plan, and then evaluate the plan again. So you usually we make it a 25 years plan, and but we revisit the plan for every 5 years and look at how that plan is really working on a 5 year to 5 year basis, and then you modify the plan if needed. And throughout that process, education, public participation, and outreach, so stuff like that that we are doing today, it's very, very important, where we need to educate people. We do a lot of capacity building to the people and get the people on board, because every day you are getting garbage from their homes. So if public does not participate, it's very difficult to do a very effective waste management. And so once you have done those exercises, then you come up with whether it's a biological conversion, chemical conversion, thermal conversion. There are several technologies out there. I will not go in detail of those. Each one of these technologies have their merits and demerits. We have to identify which one will work best in our city, in our town, and after having a good understanding of the garbage. And whenever we make decision, we should also look at, are we really doing environmental good, or we are doing just the problem shifting. This picture here, it gives illustrate that point, that this gentleman has a diesel car, and he feels like, oh, I'm so dirty, I feel so dirty because I'm putting all these exhausts there. Now he bought an electric car, and he feels very clean because there is hardly any exhaust. But this electric car is working on the battery. Battery has to be charged, and the charge of the battery is coming from coal-based thermal power plant. Now the coal-based thermal power plant is giving all these emissions out there. So are we really doing good to the environment by buying this electric car? We don't know. we have to do something what is known as the life cycle assessment. We need to do that, and in fact, one of my master's student did that 2 years ago, last year actually. And what we found is with the present energy mix of India, if say tomorrow if we convert all our car to electric car, say tomorrow all of a sudden all our car disappears and instead of we get all the electric cars on the road, we are actually not doing any environmental good to the system. It will look good on your roads, but total environmental emissions, if you look at, in fact, it will go a little bit on the worst side, because this if you look, I'm talking about globally now, with this rare earth metals that is required to make all those electric car batteries. They go through a very rigorous mining operation. There's a huge environmental footprint. Your battery, which needs to be charged, present energy mix in India, which is heavy on coal power, again will have a lot of emissions coming out like this. So it environmentally actually does not make sense. uh, yes, it may look good, it may sound good, and we have to go to that route at some point of time. But first we need to work on our energy mix. We have to fix the energy mix to make it more renewables, so that we can use more renewables in there. Coming to waste to energy in India, that's why I'm saying having a holistic approach. What I was trying to talk about here is having a holistic approach. So waste to energy in India, this came out in 2018 by Swati Singh Sambyal and Richa. They have written it it's to burn or not to burn. Um, so as you can see, capacity in megawatt 69.2 was operational, and then this much under construction, this much proposed. Some of these may already been they may have made already. But look at this number, which I want you to highlight: non-functional, almost as much as what is operational. So why did they fail? We have to really do that. We have to, as a citizen of this country, as a taxpayer citizen of this country, I need to find out, like, what really went wrong, what happened to my taxpayers money in these plants, why did not function, so that we don't repeat the same mistake in these. We should fix that mistake, so that we should have the non-functional should go down over the years, and it should not go up. So that's kind of and again, the one of the reason for that was lack of source aggregation. So I'll give you one example of one project as a concept of circular economy. This is one project that we have developed recently, and it has got a lot of press coverage. Some of you may have seen that, where we took this food waste, again source segregated, yard waste, sorts. So yard waste means anything from your yard, backyard and front yard. So leaves and twigs and those kind of stuff. Again, it is source segregated, no plastics, nothing in there. And we have a reactor which is called hydrothermal carbonization reactor. We produce this hydrochar, make these fuel pellets. These fuel pellets can take place of coal. And this is not only the fuel pellets, we can substitute the carbon black and activated carbon. Wherever the activated carbon is used, we can use it for adsorbent or energy storage. We have tested it for energy storage as well. So from food waste, I can make carbon, which will become part of your cell phone. Isn't it cool? Which will become of your cell phone charges, like cell phone, that battery. Rechargeable battery I can make from food waste. The food that you throw down today, if I from your house, maybe after a year, I will sell that food waste to you in the form of carbon and in your cell phone. So that is possible. That is the research shows that it is possible, and it can be used as soil amendment, can be carbon sequestered biochar, can be used as a fuel. So that kind of leads a concept of what is known as circular economy, with the kind of zero waste concept. So we have looked at, we have already done like a lab scale. We have a pelletizer. We made those pellets as well. These are our own picture. And then we are looking at in terms of socio-economic, environmental benefits, like the full scale life cycle analysis kind of stuff, where it could be used in a gasifier, and the economic aspect of it, energy aspect of it, and everything. It can potentially be done from a university campuses, from the gated communities, from food processing park. We can get, and it is easier to get source segregated waste from these locations. Ideally, we should be able to get it from throughout the country. And some papers got published, which is as part of the PhD work. And as you can see, it was in the news. It was in 2019, July 31st, and it was in several newspaper. In fact, 13, 14 newspaper had picked up that story. So we are working on those stuff right now, just for your get you excited. Those of you who are interested to do research, and you can always write to us. And we are trying to take this kitchen and food processing waste and make different value-added products: biogas, biomethane, biofertilizers, even bioplastics and biopolymer. So all those different stuff we are trying to make in our lab at IIT Kharagpur. And when I say we, like I have some colleagues as well, and several PhD students and master students. So this is right now. They see the winter is coming, and then when the winter comes, many of you are in Delhi. You start getting that problem of burning of rice straw and wheat straw from Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP, and you get all those stuff. So to solve that problem, we can have a straw, stubble, green waste, agricultural waste, dry waste, food waste. We can do hydrochar pellets, as I told you, energy application, soil amendment, and all that. And this process also has water. The water is, we're not adding water. We are getting this water because the food waste has water. Food waste has almost 50-60% moisture, sometimes even more. So this organic rich processed water, we can do anaerobic digestion and produce gas, which is can go through the government's that CBG program, compressed biogas program. So these are the stuff that we need to look at now. Pandemic, because if this was what we were working on until now, and then suddenly this pandemic hit us in March. Labs are closed. My PhD students, some of you probably might be in audience right now, uh, but we are stuck, and because of this pandemic. But the pandemic also has created a lot of waste management challenges, which we are trying to address as well. So as you can see, this plastics, especially plastics, food waste also has changed. Like people did a lot of panic buying, and that led to a lot of panic buying by the people. That led to a lot of food waste being generated, and online delivery. That also a lot of packaging. Sometimes you end up getting more than what you need, and of course, lots and lots of plastic waste and PPE disposal. That again is a big problem, like how to dispose them. Stockpiling, that also leads to a lot of additional waste generation as well. PPE, if you look at most of the PPE stuff is based off your plastic and other polymers. And right now they have helped in terms of Corona crisis. But once you discard it, I kept on saying that every time I talk about plastic waste, I say that plastic as a material is not that much of a problem, other than those single-use plastic. It is that plastic waste, the waste which you dump it into the environment without proper managing it, that becomes a problem. So if you can manage this plastic waste properly, it's not of a big deal. So in terms of the waste coming from this coronavirus pandemic, if it's a biomedical waste, of course there is a separate the way it has to be managed. There is a CPCB guideline. There is also a CPCB also come up with a corona waste, like a COVID waste guideline as well, where we have a designated biomedical waste treatment facilities. Like for this area we have in Haldia, so Haldia, which is a port. So every area, if you can look up on Google, you will find you have a facility. They have approved by CPCB. They are supposed to come and collect it, and mostly they do incineration. They have to have an incineration as a controlled burning, and also they do autoclave and other stuff, and they make it like less harmful. And some of the stuff after it is less harmful can potentially be recycled as well. So there are two categories, like the red bag and the blue bag and the yellow bag. Red bag is, of course, it has to be incinerated. Blue bag can be autoclaved and can be recycled for other if recyclables are there. But this plastic has really created a lot of problem. So that also discouraged plastic recycling center, because we had slump in oil prices. Plastic is essentially coming from oil. If the oil prices goes down, making new plastic gets cheaper. People could not come for job for the work because of the lockdown, and the things were closed. See, waste collection is an essential service. Waste recycling is not. So because of that, we had staff shortages, waste recycling got impacted. There was a transport restriction as well. So all those had an impact on plastic recycling and other recycling as well. There is a hygiene concern for people, that they think the single-use bag is much better than the reusable bag, because this may have viruses sticking there, and then I will get exposed to that. So those issues are also created a lot of problem. Then plastic bag bans are being rolled back in many parts of the world because of this coronavirus fear. Spurs cities to reverse hard-fought single-use stuff. Post-corona world. So what post-COVID? What how it will happen? We'll see a aggressive plastic industry try to sell a lot of plastic products, including single-use. Single-use plastic is what we need to keep on working on reducing single-use plastic. Uh, Getting people's behavior change. Right now, if you don't give them plastic bag, they are not happy. They want plastic bag in those stores because they think that's the hygienic. Although that's not always correct, because this virus does stay on plastic surfaces as well. We don't know much about the virus, but the limited knowledge that we have regarding the virus, we know that some metal surface, such as this copper stuff, it does not, it stays only for a few hours. But other than that, most of the surfaces it can stay for 2 to 3 days. Now that is also impacting the recycling business, because we are not we are afraid to touch that garbage for 2 to 3 days. So we will just collect it and then dump it in a corner, but that means we need a bigger space now. We need additional storage space for keeping that recyclable for 2 to 3 days. Plastics does help us, but are we responsible users? So we have this litter everywhere. So even somebody has put that out there. The biggest virus on earth is actually still human behavior, and that we see during this COVID as well. Still, you will find many people without mask. In fact, even some of the world leaders don't wear masks. So what we can do? So propose practice to fight future pandemics, in try to reduce manual labor to automated system. Country like India, again, we need jobs, but with we have to prevent people from virus as well. So try to go at least some sort of automated system, so human touch is as less as possible. And then wherever the human touch is there, we have to give them proper PPE, personal protective equipment, so they don't get exposed to virus. Although latest science is suggesting that it is most dangerous, in terms of virus getting from one person to another person, is through the through aerosol. So it's not through the air, not through touching of the surface and all that. But again, we don't know much. Tomorrow we may have some other things as well. So we can go for waste to energy, again at a controlled environment, at a high temperature. Chemical recycling could be there, going towards bioplastic, more circular economic stuff. Then in terms of, we looked into the solid waste management trends during this COVID-19 crisis. And we looked at waste from the house, waste from quarantine homes, temporary medical facilities, healthcare facilities, how it should be sorted and stored. Like segregation should be encouraged. Anything which has people who suspected, even suspected people with COVID, that waste has to be collected separately. It should be double lined sealed bags with a specified symbol. And we put it in a separate bag, and then it should be collected separately as well. And more trucks may be required, collection may be increased, may require more number of trucks, increased frequency of collection, and then try to go through this composting, anaerobic digestion, recycling, secure landfill, and automated treatment facilities should be encouraged as much as possible. So we have to have social, institutional, personal behavior change post-COVID world, where you reduce plastic pollution and change in perception of plastic as hygiene, reduce waste generation, source segregation, invest in research, promote social awareness. All those things in detail we looked at, and we have in fact published 2 papers of during this pandemic only. We have published these 2 papers. One on for the entire solid waste, which we are talking today, in terms of effective solid waste management during and post COVID-19. This paper is available. If you are interested, I'll be more than happy to share. You can link with you, and you can download that paper. And we also looked at plastic on just on plastic. So how to look at plastic during and after coronavirus pandemic. So now very quickly, next 2-3 minutes, and then I'll stop. This is one project that we have been working on with National Geographic Society, where we have tried to see how to prevent plastic from reaching the ocean. So this is part of like a National Geographic Society project, National Geographic TV, you may be familiar with. So we have looked at several sites along the river Ganges, and we have done sampling and try to find out how much waste is being mismanaged, how to prevent the waste from getting mismanaged and getting into our river Ganga, and so that finally getting into ocean. So this is our team. This is my students who worked on it, and then this is my partner from US and myself, and this was in Rishikesh. Rishikesh, and this is again in Rishikesh. Like her students as well joined us, and so we had a lot of field work at all those particular sites, and then we have done a lot of work. But today, just I want to show you one graph here. So we have done what is known as look at the litter. How much litter is being so along these all these cities, the Harsel, Rishikesh, Anupshahar, Kannauj, Varanasi, Patna, Sahibganj, Rajbari, Chandpur, and Chafsan. Last three is in Bangladesh, and this seven is in India. So we had looked at 56,881 items we found, and that was only at a not we did a limited area. It was just a sampled area, so we can calculate litter density, which is the density per square meter, and then we can predict how much litter is coming out. But individually, we counted this many items. 56,881 items was counted in these 10 locations, and mostly plastic food wrappers, tobacco sachets, seat-like plastic fragments, paper, cigarettes. So those were the major ones, but there were a lot of other as well. Then there was another project where I was involved to look at the plastic as a key to addressing ocean pollution. This was funded by what is a high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy. It's a unique initiative by 14 world leaders. So world leaders from around the, like from pretty much several places in the world, from Canada all the way to your Japan, and it under the guidance of UN UN program, UN Special General Special Envoy for the Ocean, Peter Thompson. So he was kind of overall like a in charge for this. So we have done a what is known as a blue paper, which is we looked at leveraging multi-state strategy to address plastic pollution in the context of already stressed ocean. So myself, Ali Moss, and Jenna Jambak. Jenna was the same lady who was in the other picture with whom I'm doing that National Geographic project. And then we had contributors from all over the world. We had contributors pretty much from every continent, and who contributed towards this around 65 pages blue paper. Again, this is available on public domain. You can download it and you can read it. So we looked at the plastic pollution to ocean, but we looked at the pollution from all the other sources as well, including solid waste, and we come up with how to the recommendation of how to improve, what we need to do for improving wastewater infrastructure, stormwater management, uh, resource efficiency, recover, recycle, and local, like go towards a decentralized approach and all that. So this slide I keep on showing everywhere whenever I present. So I did not miss it this time as well. So this is I offer a course, online course. It's a MOOC course. This is the fourth offering right now, and where people it's going on, and one can take this course and learn more about the waste management. So last slide, what are the take-home messages in terms of pandemic, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, during pandemic? Number one thing we have to focus on is source segregation. Segregation. Getting good quality data. Having bad data is actually worse than having no data, because bad data means you will do all your design based on bad data, and that will create a problem. So you need to have good quality data. Capacity building in terms of ULB infrastructure, hard infrastructure, as well as soft infrastructure, having trained manpower, having a lot of people understand what is waste management. And pandemic now, as you saw, has created more challenges. So innovation, social responsibility, corporate action, and government policies, those are of course needed, vital for change. And it is individual effort also is very, very important. So thank you for your attention. And I hope it was interesting. And then I'm open for any questions that you have. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. It is always a delight and pleasure to listen to you. Wonderful talk as always. And always, I get back, I get home with a lot of learning lessons. Thank you very much. So I have a few initial thoughts I would like to place in front of you before I invite other discussants. So you have very clearly mentioned about the merits, demerits of different kinds of waste management techniques. And then you brought about your research on electric cars. And then you say that over the longer period of term, it might not be very helpful, in the sense that for the objective that these cars are being promoted.
And
So has the government of India in general been alerted about it? If if it isn't sustainable, sir, then why at the first place do we intend to go ahead by incorporating or by investing our scarce resources? That is my first submission. Second is that I was just looking at the at your high level panel for ocean pollution, the study that you did. We did not have India as one of the states, one of the nation states. Why was it, if there are any answers to it? And another point, that public health during the pandemic is, it is jeopardized at multiple levels, and beginning from COVID-19 itself. And as the evidence shows, the improper disposal of biomedical and solid waste further raises the problems or challenges to public health, with significant impact on the environment. Why is there a complacency? Because we all know that there is a challenge, but why are things not moving in the way or in the war footing which other countries, perhaps in the developed West, as you mentioned that Western European countries and even in the Americas, they are doing quite well. Why aren't we moving in that direction? And if we continue to go in this very pace, what do you think would be the implications? A pandemic at another scale? Over to you, sir.
Okay, so in terms of electric car, actually, I want to maybe there was a little bit of confusion. What I said was, as of today, based on the present energy mix that we have in India, moving from gasoline car to electric car is not going to help much from an environmental point of view. As we make progress and we move to more renewable energy, if our renewable energy is more than 65-70%, then going to electric car makes sense. As of today, where we are mostly coal-based thermal power plant, which we are getting energy, moving from gasoline car to electric car is just, you are shifting the problem. You are not solving the problem. And the other thing we need to look at electric car is that rare earth metals. Those rare earth metals, again, there is most of them comes from China. So China is #1 producer of rare earth metals in the world today. And so there is a reliance on China as well in terms of getting those rare earth. We can get rare earth, some of the rare earth, by recycling our batteries and other things within India itself, but we don't have those facilities right now. So in terms of electric car, again, what saying that today, if you move like tomorrow, overnight, if we change to electric car, it is not going to help the environment. But we have to work towards getting into renewables, and then we are at a stage of around 65-70% renewable, then it will make sense to move to electric car. In California, they did that study. In late 90s, there was a push in California to move towards electric car. But they did a study, and they did not do this movement until last few years. Like in the last decade, they are moving towards electric car. And in that study, they found in late 90s, the study was done that moving to electric car was not going to make much sense, because the energy, from environmental point of view, it does not really make sense. Of course, you can move from the city to the outskirts in terms of pollutions. Now, in terms of your other second question on high level panel, that yes, I'm not aware why India was not part of that actually. This was done by World Resource Institute, and we do have like a good boundary. We do have like Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal. So, but somehow I don't know why India was not part of that. Actually, I don't have the answer to it. So, but I will try to find out from my friends at World Resource Institute, and then let you know. And biomedical waste or general waste during this public health crisis, many countries are actually struggling. One thing we should also realize that during this pandemic, uh, if you look at the hospitals, they are overloaded. Now, I give it for the example of our area right now. We have, as I said, our designated biomedical waste treatment facility is in Haldia. So Haldia is around 2 hours, 2.5 hours, depending on traffic. It will take from here to go to Haldia. So the truck is supposed to come from there, and biomedical waste collection truck, and it should take it within 48 hours from our hospitals in and around Kharagpur area right now. but many times they are not able to because they are overburdened, because the number of people going to those hospitals are much higher now. Even every hospital nowadays, you hear that we are not getting beds in hospital. People are not able to find bed. So those, since there is a lot of demand and not enough infrastructure. And see, pandemic happens once in a while. So one obvious answer is let's make a lot of this biomedical waste facility. But what they will do after pandemic, if they stay, if they don't get enough garbage, they will not be able to run those. They don't get enough biomedical waste, they will not be able to run those plants. So we have to have a balance, but it has to be managed properly. I'm not saying the waste needs to be managed properly. This biomedical waste has to be collected as per the rule. The CPCB rule during this COVID-19 is that within 48 hours, the biomedical waste has to be collected from these facilities and has to be treated properly. That's from the hospital. But from isolation center, from our individual homes and other stuff, it is the responsibility of Ministry of Urban Development, our municipalities. Municipalities has to collect it and bring it to this hospital from where this biomedical waste facility will collect it and take it to their location. So of any, as you know, in our India, rules are always there. Intent of the rule is also okay, but it is always the problem comes say because of lack of infrastructure to implement that rule, and also willingness and making that extra effort. Some countries are doing better than us. In terms of COVID, in fact, one of the best country in the world, the so-called, they call themselves one of the best countries, also not doing that well. And I'm talking about United States. So they are also having, in fact, a lot of cases, a lot of stuff, and a lot of but yeah, of course, their facilities are much better than us. They have, the infrastructure is better. So that's why you don't see biomedical waste kind of lying around over there as you may see in Indian context. But they're also struggling in terms of managing stuff.
Sure, sure. Thank you very much, sir, for your responses. So, with these initial few comments, I would come back to the questions that have been put forth in the chat box by the audience. Before that, I would like to invite our discussants. And I would request the discussants to be very brief and pose the direct questions in a couple of minutes, and your few observations, if you have any, for another couple of minutes. So take maximum of 5 minutes each for each of the discussants. With these few words, I invite Professor Utpal to make your comments. So over to you, Professor Utpal. Sir, if you could unmute your mic.
Thank you. Actually, outside, suddenly I was talking to Arjun, suddenly thunderstorm started outside. So signal is very poor. So can you hear me now? I could join much later. So, actually from mobile, I am doing this tethering now. Wi-Fi gone suddenly. So,
we have 5 minutes.
Okay. So Brajesh ji, just one thing. Do you think because post-pandemic situation, you are thinking we need some steps for managing the biomedical waste or all these things? So do you think there will be a surge of biomedical waste because of this pandemic? Because of people are using mask and other things. That's why. Because I don't think these are contributing significant. As usual, there is a biomedical waste in India we have to follow. So it is not much different from that. So that will be continued, and what is not followed in every places, I think that has to be enforced. Not only legal thing. I don't know whether you have seen that angle, that if it is linked with any market system, then it may be implemented in a better way. Means everywhere now market system operates in a much more efficient way. If you employ some people, for example, for the disposal of the biomedical waste or any kind of waste, same way. So some places you need where to dump it, how to dispose, whether that will have a site contamination or not, how to manage it. So many things come, no? So institutional arrangement by employing people or engaging in something, so there is some cost involved in it, and it has some what you call side impact, that is externality cost, what we call. But if it is linked with some market, maybe that cost may be much lower and more efficient way the same waste management can take place. As for example, when we talk of this visiting the park, people take inside the plastic bottles, take food inside, many of these things. So some places what they did, that deposit refund system, when you take inside the thing, you have to deposit some 10-20 rupees like that. So if you bring back all the plastics and the wastage and you show them, they refund you money. That means if they bring back, then they will get back the money, only minimum amount they may deduct. So what happens that you don't need to employ anybody, whereas park remain clean, as good as. So it cleans because you are enforcing them to pay otherwise. If you don't bring back, you will not get back the money. So we have to engage somebody for cleaning. There's an example like that. So basically it is a market system. So cost of that is within that internalized when you are doing. So biomedical waste also similar such type, if some market can be involved, whether that is possible or not, whether that angle you have seen or you have any point to make.
Yes, so can I respond? Like,
Sir,
Yeah.
Professor Dubey, I would, before responding to
Okay.
before responding to each of the discussants' comments, I would like all the discussants to make their remarks, and then together
Sure.
you can respond. Perhaps there might be an. I request Professor Uday Shankar, who is joining us from IIT Kharagpur, to make his comments. Sir, Professor Uday Shankar, if you can hear me, and if you could also turn on your video.
I have no question to ask. This is really a very enriching session. So thanks to IMPRI and thanks to Professor Dubey for organizing a wonderful session. So I have no specific question to Professor Dubey. But
thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for that motivation. I now request Ms. Ritika, Senior Research Assistant at.
Hello, sir. It was a very nice presentation, and as you have said in your take-home messages that we have to segregate the waste. So my question to you is, can we do centralized segregation instead of source segregation?
Okay, so yes, like
Sir, I think, sir, we can take few more questions, then you can answer.
Okay, sure.
Simi? Will that be good? Yeah.
Sorry, my connection was a bit unstable. Could you please?
Simi, I'm saying that we can
Sure,
collect more questions and then sir can answer, right?
Go ahead.
Because we also have Q&As, many questions coming.
Arjun, I'm not able to.
Sir, I'm saying that in the next round, because we have many questions on Q&A also.
Sure.
Right. So Anshula, why not you go first?
Anshula, please go ahead, Anshula, and followed by Anshula, I request Arjun to make his comments. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So my question to Professor Dubey and your presentation, sir, I will have proper data collection and waste audit in designing effective waste management systems. What is the significance?
Anshula, come again.
Yeah.
Anshula, yes, please repeat. Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. My question to Professor Dubey, and you've touched upon this in your presentation, sir, is that why is it necessary to have proper data collection and waste audit for designing effective waste management systems?
Okay. Sure. So I can respond to these three. Yeah.
I can also add in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I have a few, many of the questions. So one thing, as being our garbologist, I really want to understand in this difficult time now, that with waste there is also stigma and also geography. So something what we always see as something called waste imperialism, that from city areas to peri-urban areas or rural areas, or from America to our Tamil Nadu coast, the whole link and where it is going. And then, sir, you rightly mentioned the point about the electric car and what is the source of fuel we are using. So what is the point that if you ban the diesel cars in Delhi, and then all the cars are, just those diesel cars are polluting our Himalayas or any small cities. And that was a very pertinent point. And what should we do in that regard, that just to, even in New Delhi we have cycle and many other schemes to reduce this. And then I really had this interesting question. I think Simi can ask that question on soil waste. Simi, yes. And then, sir, I really wanted to know your views on the EIA draft, that what do you think from the waste or resource management point of view, the EIA draft which has come, which is also pushing businesses in terms of ease of doing businesses. But what do you think the landscape, geography, or sustainable development, is it taking care of that, from especially the solid waste management? Uh, After than that, I really wanted to touch upon our other schemes like Namami Gange. Sir is also doing a project. Sir, what has been the impact of that project, and are things really yielding to anything other than the STPs and other new regulation from the SWM 2016 rules which has come? Are they going to be relaxed in this coronavirus pandemic, or are we here now again seeing a new 2021 rules just because of the COVID? So will it be just the game, this rules getting updated, but there is no impact assessment as such, which is being done? Related to it, Swachh Bharat Mission, also now we have all the latrine coverage in the household covered. That was the open defecation thing. I think we have really moved past that, rightly so. And Swachh Bharat Mission really did not have that much of capability, especially for the cities, to install that kind of infrastructure, which can, have, our be it sewerage, be it sewage, or be it solid waste capacities. It has not really led to. The program associated with it was Amrut. Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. That has also not yielded much. I would say around 1.5 lakh crore has been the spent so far. Vis-a-vis, we have the new infrastructure pipeline, which is to the tune of 103 lakh crores. Very less urban projects there, around 16 lakh crores. Even in that, none for these resources. So what will be these mega plans for the waste sector? As Ritika rightly pointed out, that, sir, do we really have to segregate at central level, or source segregation? Is source segregation something which is, as Professor Utpal rightly pointed out, that it is also very laborious? So what market mechanism, those sort of things can be done? Next, sir, I wanted to know something from your practice. We have also tried in Jharkhand government to have again the study which you did in Guwahati and other places. What can be done, sir, in terms of the projects which cities and our villages are taking, other than the segregation and all the littering, anti-littering, and those things, in terms of incineration plants, in terms of the waste dumps we have, large landfills we have, in which direction these plants are moving? Are they feasible? And what should be the road ahead for these kind of steps which we are taking in terms of policy or as a tool, also from the point of practitioner, but also from the point of view of government? What should they do in their terms? But most of all, what should we do in terms of waste education, I would say, for our young researchers and all over faculties to give as a message rightly? I would thank you and congratulate once again. Sir, you can choose to answer this question. Then I think in the next round, Simi, you can really collect all the question and briefly give to Professor Dubey to answer in the next round. Sir, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So there are several points. So I'll try to go one by one. So starting with Professor Day's comment regarding that biomedical waste and trying to have, so there is actually we have to follow biomedical waste rules of the CPCB rule is there, which has mandated certain companies. So they have given certain companies, so companies have to apply to get the permit, and based on that permit, these companies are allowed to operate. So we already have private parties. They have been allotted certain areas. So every region, so a few districts in a particular in a state is given to a particular company. The company may have multiple units, and so all the waste that is produced in that area is managed by them. In terms of recycling of biomedical, there are two. If you go to any hospital which follows the biomedical waste rules, you will find that there will be a red bag and a yellow bag. Red bag is essentially for going to anything which has touched the body fluids. Anything with the body fluids, the blood and other stuff, or anything related to body fluids, it needs to go to the red bag, and the red bag goes to incineration. And as per the rule, it has to be burned. That's the rule says. Now for the yellow bag, there are recyclables there which can potentially be recycled, but after doing the disinfection. So you take it to a autoclave. That's what they do. They will do a autoclave, and then they will take it out, and it does go to recyclers. And whether like they do employ certain people, and then it goes to recycling. But we cannot have individual like rack pickers and small coming and going into the hospitals and getting stuff because of the fear of infection and other fear that we have. But regular waste from hospital is same as any waste. Like regular waste, like if you go and visit your friend there in the hospital and you eat something and you produce the waste in from the cafeteria and all, that is as a normal municipal solid waste that has to be managed. And there, what you're talking about, that those getting those small like NGOs and other people getting in the money, and those things are possible to do that. Now, then we had a question on segregation in terms of whether source segregation or centralized segregation. Source segregation is something which we prefer as a waste engineer, because in that case your waste is clean. Keeping the waste clean is very, very important for any process. Like if you look at, when you look at the research papers, you look at some of the pilot plants or even the existing plants. So for example, waste to energy plant or a compost plant. In a compost plant, if you have plastics, if you have metals, then that compost is not good. That you will not be able to sell that compost. So doing the source segregation is the best option. But in the event that source segregation cannot be done in a transition period, see, we have to set up the system to do source segregation. It will not happen overnight. So in the transition period, we can do a centralized segregation, which again will not be that much helpful, but at least will be better than doing no segregation. So that's what, but our goal should always to have a effective waste management system. Our goal should be to have source segregation as much as possible, at least wet and dry. Like what the Municipal Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 tells us, that at least do wet and dry. I showed you the picture that wet means only the food waste and other stuff can go for composting, biomethanation. Dry is your paper, plastic, glass, metals, and you can separate those stuff. And there are markets. The plastic, like this evening you will watch IPL game, you see that fancy t-shirt that they wear, that again has recycled plastic. So those things are used for that. Now there was a question from data. See, data, as I mentioned in my last slide, the take home message as well, that data quality is very important. Right now in India, we don't really know how much really waste we produce per day. All are guesstimates. They are all estimates. They are not real numbers, because we haven't done the waste audit. Waste audit is where you go and try to get the actual value as much as close to actual numbers as possible. So I know that we will not be able to get with 100% accuracy those numbers, but at least we should get to some like a level of confidence that this is what waste we are producing, and this is what is there in the garbage. How much is paper? How much is plastic? How much is glass? How much is metal? How much is our food waste and yard waste? And it is not only the waste that is produced at our home, because as the waste travels from our home all the way to the disposal center or the treatment center, in between we have the rack pickers taking some things out. In between we have cows and other animals eating eating things away, and you will have even at the dump site you see people taking away the recyclables away. So now if I set up a treatment plant, for example, I set up a waste to energy plant, and I do the sampling from each houses, like I go to some HIG flats, LIG flats, or MIG flats, lower income group, medium income group, high income group, get some representative sample. But not, that's not the sample what that this waste to energy plant will get when they really operate the plant, because in between a lot of things has gone. Paper is gone, plastic is gone because the rack pickers took it away, food waste is gone because some animal ate it. So what you have at the waste to energy plant is way different, and then the plant is designed based on the data which was from the houses, but the plant is running on the data which is with the values which is actual value on. So the data quality, like what is the, that is very, very important. We need to really understand the data, because if you have a bad data to start with, whatever plant you design, if the data is not good, then your plant will suffer. Now, there were several questions from Arjun, the stigma and electric car. Again, you had a question on electric car as well. Electric car, again, what I'm trying to say is, as of today's energy mix, electric car does not make sense in terms of from an environmental point of view. But out of like 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, when our energy system improves, it may be different. We will have we'll have a different the result might be different. Now, a stigma for the waste, yes, it is there. It is, the waste is mostly thrown out of the outskirts of the city, in the areas where we have vulnerable population. We try to find the waste disposal. So there is a social justice issue, and those things needs to be addressed as well. And they are supposed to be addressed as part of the document, like our rules. And it is also as part of our say something like a EIA kind of draft, which also talks about those social angle and other angles there too. So that's how it needs to be addressed. There is no, it takes time, um, but there is this is the way it has to be approached. Now, EIA draft, I did had a look at it from for the waste management. If you look at the waste management point of view, we have the waste management rules. Of course, EIA does play a role over there as well, but EIA is much broader, and some of the stuff in EIA people are not that like happy about, because it kind of says that if I am polluting, I will go and tell to the regulator that I am polluting, please do something to me. Like that, nobody will do that, isn't it? So it's a lot of self-regulation is there. In country like India, still the self-regulation does not work very well. We see that in our day-to-day affair. We need to have some sort of regulation more. It will come out as it is being debated upon, and once there are a lot of people are making representation against those EIA drafts, so things are going in that area as well. So now you had a question on incineration plant. Incineration plants, the reason some incineration plants are working okay, some have are struggling, and the reason they are struggling is because again they are getting a lot of wood, like bricks, concrete pieces, a lot of those material which is not burnable, which will not combust, which will not contribute to energy. So when this gets mixed up, like for example, you visit some of the waste to energy plant in India, you will find the ash content to be around 40-45%, 35-40%, where if Western European countries, you will find 10 to 15%. So with that 40% ash, it is a headache for that waste to energy plant to dispose that ash. I try to find a place for those ash. So that's why they struggle. So having source segregation in place again will help in terms of incineration plant. Now with this pandemic and post-pandemic, we will see a lot of plastic related waste coming in, which has a high calorific value. So that may be a plus for incineration plant, but again, those incineration plant has to be worked at very high temperature, 1000 degrees centigrade and above, to reduce air pollution. Otherwise, we'll have air pollution problems. And we have to have the air pollution system working as well. Now, you also talked about Namami Gange, Swachh Bharat Mission, Amrut and all that. Namami Gange, yes, I'm like as part of the that consortium of IITs which we are involved in. In fact, Professor Uday Shankar is on line as well. He is also, in fact, he has been involved before me, because I came back to country in 2015, but this is going on, I think from Manmohan Singh's first term or the second term, I don't remember. So when this project is started, the name has changed, but it is it's the same project. So they have been so there are lot of some work has been done in Namabi Gange side. STPs are being built, and you look at some of those in terms of ghats and other stuff, ghats, crematoria, and those things have been constructed. But in terms of river quality, still we have not made that much of a progress. In the first part of pandemic, there was report that actually Ganges is doing better because of industries being closed. But now the recent report by CPCB suggests that actually it did not do that well. In fact, the Ganges river quality went down, water quality went down during this pandemic period. So, so there are again, glass is half full, things are being done, and it will keep on making progress on that side. Swachh Bharat Mission, Amrut, those, again, the programs are very good, we all know, but implementation, if you look at the finances of both of all these programs, not much money has been spent. Many of the ULBs are still does not have the adequate infrastructure to collect the source segregated garbage. Rule says segregate garbage. Trucks we don't have trucks which can collect segregated garbage. Now, so how will implement those rules? So the ULBs have to get equipped to get those the hard infrastructure that I was referring to. We need to build a lot of hard infrastructure, like all those trucks and other stuff, to really implement these programs. So I think I tried to cover everything. And
yes, I think so, sir. On the soil part, I think Simi Mehta did some connection.
Actually, Professor Utpal Dey wanted to say something.
Okay. I'll just add, sir, the metal content in our soil is so high. I thought you could also touch upon, since we are talking about waste management. And yes, over to Professor Utpal Dey. Simi, you can collect the questions, right?
Yes, that is fine. Just after Professor Dey has spoken, I would just put in the questions in brief for Sir, so that he can take them all together and briefly respond to them. Professor.
Yes, we will also share the email ID of Professor Dubey. So many people have many questions, I see. Okay, Professor Dubey, we will in the chat box.
Perhaps. I can put my email. Yeah, I can do my email address here. No problem.
Yes, because many questions are coming. Professor Dey, yes, please.
Yeah, Professor Brajesh, that
yes,
you told no. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
You told no. Some market mechanism like is there. Some companies are interested for doing the cleaning work, segregation, all these. How they will do? No, so they are paid for that. I was not trying to say like that. Market mechanism here involved which can internalize the same thing. Suppose the creator of the garbage, if they can be given some incentive, then that may be more cleaning, and as well as your expenditure will be less in the form of engaging some outside agencies like that. Mm-hmm. Suppose if some of the industries who are emitting the garbages to the rivers, for example, Ganga, etc. So if they are said that before throwing it, if you clean properly on your own, so your taxes will be relaxed by 5 or 10%. So whatever money government will lose in the form of tax, maybe the cleanliness will come up so much that their value will be much more. That can happen. So in your biomedical waste cases also, those who are, because what is happening, that Swachh Bharat Mission, somebody gave example I saw here, that normally in all these cases, expenditure is borne by somebody else, as we are the employees paying 0.5% surcharge for the cleanliness. You remember? From your salary it is going. But the garbage you are not created by somebody. So unless you use the command and control approach like that, so because not bearing any expenditure, so they don't have any control over them, so they will create. You have seen nowadays much cleaner trains and other places also, many things happen, but who is paying for that? Paying somebody else. And those who are creating the garbage, So in their mindset, it will not come in that way. Instead, if it is entrusted that those who are creating, maybe some relaxation in the ticket will be given. If you don't throw your picture you upload, that your surrounding in the compartment is clean while you gone out after the end of journey. So next time when you buy ticket, 5% less you have to pay. For example, just one example. It may not be applicable in other cases. So what will happen? You will not need to charge from others for cleaning this. That will automatically be clean, isn't? So the hospitals who are responsible for creating this, if they are given some concessions, that is called incentive. So that is also one market mechanism, and whether that can be implemented or not, that was means my contention. So always punishment does not work. That if you do this, you will be punished or your more charge, license will be cancelled. Rather, incentive can work better, and that is more economical. Overall society's perspective, if you see, there are several examples like that.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Utpalde. By the time sir responds, I would just collate all the questions, sir, Professor Dubey, for you in short, and you can briefly respond to them so that we can wind up in the next 10 minutes. So the first question is, how do we have spoken about urban waste management, but there's a question about how do we manage village waste, where there is no garbage management system available, and people are not even aware of waste management. And what type of jobs will be generated in solid waste management in the coming future? Then there is a question on I think perhaps from your student Roshan Saxena, that the scenarios for plastic waste management, as his startup has been selected by the Madhya Pradesh government smart city. Congratulations. It is about converting waste plastic to fuel, and which fuel is feasible from waste plastic, diesel, kerosene, or biofuels. So if you could elaborate on this, sir. Another question is from Ms. Shifali Bakshi. She is a co-founder and entrepreneur of a waste management foundation. And her concern is that what solutions do we offer with respect to food container disposal? It is plastic, but has food remains, and fully biodegradable cutlery is not found around. So what are the alternatives so that we can proceed? Further, what are the methodologies we can adopt to manage waste generated during and post pandemic? I think that has been clearly mentioned, brought out by you in your presentation. I recommend looking at the YouTube link after the program for the question, the person who has asked the question. And is the landfill still the best solution for waste management in India, where there is a lot of scarcity of land? What should be the way ahead for this movement? So lots of questions, but if you could just briefly summarize and respond to them. Over to you, Professor Brajesh Dubey.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the rural area, there is if you Ministry of, say, solid waste management rules, which is mostly focuses on the urban. They also cover rural, but for the rural there is also, it comes under Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. So Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation has come up with what is known as SLWM, Solid and Liquid Waste Management Manual. So the manual is there, and the assumption is that in rural area it will be mostly organics, or you can separate organics and plastics, although plastics are there in the rural areas too. But on the organics, what they're suggesting is go for composting for most part, and biomethanation plant. That's what, and the dry waste, it is assumed in that manual that dry waste will not be that much. So you can just, so it's not, does not talk much about the dry waste. It talks mostly about the organic waste. So it is, there is a manual, but as of today, we are seeing like a good amount of plastics and other dry waste coming into the rural area. But again, it becomes a problem of economy of scale, since it is there, but it is not of a sufficient quantity to really set up a big, decent plant, because any plant has to get certain tons per day. If it does not get that much tons per day, it is not economically viable or profitable. So that becomes an issue in terms of rural area. So that is the challenge in the rural sector. So what you can do in the rural, for example, for plastics, people are making those eco brick. You maybe heard about the eco brick movement is going around, where they take the plastic bottle, put all those recyclable plastic, and then make it really tight and use it for doing a small construction and other stuff. So those kind of solution. Or for papers, you can have a small industry where you take the paper and make the paper bag out of that. Or those things can be small scale industries can be developed for the dry waste. And for wet waste, you can do those which we already talked about. Now, waste plastic to fuel, again, yeah, plastic oil, plastic like biodiesel, and it also depends on what kind of plastic you're using. So plastic, there are variety of plastics out there. So I would suggest that you look at CEPT, like CEPT, I think that's Hyderabad, CEPT Hyderabad website. And they have a very detailed, like I'm a waste management person. I'm not a plastic expert. So I'm a civil environmental engineer. I'm not a polymer person. But yes, you can do like a diesel. You can do plastic, what is known as plastic to oil. But CPT website, I would encourage you to look at, where they kind of go into detail of these kind of project. That will be a good resource to have. And of course, if you have emailed me in the back, I think it's Roshan, and you can always, if you have further question, you can send an email. I'll always try to reply. Then in terms of food containers, that's if, as per the source segregation, there are some countries in the world where people actually clean those food containers before disposing them. So if the food item is a stick with that, then sending it to the landfill becomes an only option actually, which is, so we need to at least rinse it, get rid of those food items, if anything food attached to it, so that it can go to the recyclable. It can be recycled. Or if it's if in that particular area, if mostly these are LDPE, if that LDPE is not recycled in that area, the recycle system is not there, it can go to a local cement kiln, it can go to a waste to energy plant if they are available, because it has good calorific value. So that's how, so it's actually your plastic recycler will take that food container from you as long as you keep it clean. If you have food item in there, then it becomes a problem. Now, is landfill actually is not the solution, because it's not only the problem of land, it's also the long term. If you look at landfill, means you have to keep an eye on that waste disposal site for many years, and you don't know what will happen in future. But as you saw that picture, the global snapshot, where even in Europe, they have to send around 30% of the waste to the landfill, mostly from the Eastern European countries. Western European countries, the number is in single digit. So it is around 3% to 10, 11, 12%. So if you go to Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, Austria, those countries are working on waste management for almost 40, 50 years now. But even in those countries, they have to send some waste to the landfill, just because there is no technology to recycle. Because there will always be some waste stream for which you will not have any technology. So for those waste stream, you need a landfill. And that landfill can last for a longer time. But you should, once if you do the source segregation, most of the dry waste can be recycled. Resource recovery can be done from the wet waste. So only a small fraction will need to find a place in landfill. And that's why landfill is a necessary evil, we can say, as of in today's context. Based on present situation in India, even if we make engineered landfill, I find it a significant actually improvement in terms of environmental performance. At least my soil is not getting contaminated. I have a control. I can do the leachate collection system. One can argue that many of these landfills are not designed properly. We had issues of that in Bangalore and some other places where landfill was not designed properly. But that's a design problem. That's not landfill's problem. That's not the technology problem. It was not, technology was not implemented properly. So, but many countries around the world do use landfill as a compulsion. Some countries use it as because that's a cheaper way of doing it. Because as I said earlier, there will always be some waste for which you need to have a sanitary landfill. There was one question which I saw on the chat box, which I wanted to, while Simi, you were collating together, I found that to be, so I will respond to that in a minute. And that question was talking about that biohazard waste infrastructure. that in somebody like Ajay Kumar, that in India we don't have proper biomedical bio waste infrastructure even before pandemic, and you are correct. So if that was the case, was it why the pandemic was not taken an opportunity to upgrade that biohazard treatment infrastructure? It would have been good if government. I totally agree. It was more of a comment rather than a question. That yes, this was an opportunity for us, like that to take invest money through all these pandemic related money, which all of us contributed a 1-day salary or something or the other. So maybe part of that money could have or should have, or even today it can be invested to develop the our biohazard waste management infrastructure. Because as Professor Dev was also saying that some biomedical was mismanaged even before pandemic, it will be mismanaged during pandemic, and it will even get mismanaged after pandemic if we don't improve the infrastructure. So yes, so we have to improve that. So I think with that I would end.
Yes, thank you very much, sir, for your words of wisdom, and everybody has gained a lot, I am very, very sure. And in fact, there was a last comment which came from a person living in Gujarat, who perhaps is a rhetorical question, that the training for awareness of waste management should start in the schools, and I'm sure you do agree to it. Instead of just being the sufferers of, or in fact, in fact, polluters. We should rather have this education beginning from the school level itself. And of course, family does play a great amount of role. So with these few words, I am so thankful to you, sir, for having been so generous with your time. It is a matter of great privilege that you shared your insights and words of wisdom with all of us, and I hope that great policy measures can be taken out from your lecture, as we have our media partner with us, the India Water Portal, and several other media outlets where we'll be releasing sending the press release, and the government takes note of it and does an effective waste management during and post coronavirus pandemic, because we are still during this phase. So thank you very much. I also extend my warm greetings to Professor Utpal De, Professor Uday Shankar, Anshula, Ritika, Dr. Arjun Kumar, and for the audience for being so lively and for asking so many questions. In fact, we need to have a separate session with you, sir, with just question and answers, and less of your talk and more of your questions, of responding to the questions. That would be perhaps the next.
I would like to add that Professor Dubey would be joining us in many of our planet talks.
Of course,
So
yes.
Many those questions we can cover if people
Yes.
coming. And Utpal sir, while you were having thunderstorm, Professor Dubey gave a very thunderstorm PowerPoint presentation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's why we are double, because I joined late. He is from Namibia, my student, recently got PhD. He also joined.
Yeah.
Great.
He is
Congratulations.
telling their municipality, whether you create wastage or not, every family has to pay tax. And municipality will come and collect. So there is an incentive that since I am paying tax without creating garbage, why to pay tax? Better to create as much as possible. So that's why I was telling, rather incentive may work better there. If you don't create, then you will be given some relaxation. Isn't?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Well taken, sir.
So, yeah,
Okay.
he just got PhD. He came from University of Namibia.
Great. Congratulations. We all extend our congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Dubey.
Tell anything you want to say.
Yes, and we have shared the email ID. We will also share at other places. So if anyone can want to join the course of Professor Dubey or have any question or any report to look into this scientific approach of solid waste management.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, and have a nice evening.
Have a very pleasant evening. Thank you very much, sir. Once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.